Alright, y'all, welcome back to the Antique Geek Garage. So I finally just got my engine block back for today. So this is a fresh 30 over LSJ block, and all of this needs to end up inside there with fresh gaskets and seals. So I'm going to get this thing up on this stand here. We're going to get it bolted down, and we're just going to start from the bottom end. Or actually, first thing we're going to do is we're going to gap rings. I'll show you how I gap rings. We're going to gap these rings for this new block, and then we're going to flip it over and start from the bottom and work our way through this entire parts pile, hopefully in a timely manner. But, you know, I'd rather get this done properly if it takes longer. And then I got to drop the subframe out of the car. We lost the garage. A lot of bad things have happened in the last few weeks while this was gone. But, we have to drop the subframe out of the car. We have to get the transmission cleaned. We'll get the transmission cleaned. It's in the bed of my truck. We'll get that all taken care of, and then we'll try to put all this back together. I'm hoping to get all of this done, like, today. But because I do have a normal job in life, it's already 5 p.m. So it's going to be a late night. This does even make it into the car. I'm willing to bet I'm just going to get the engine completely done, subframe down, transmission mounted up, and just get ready so that tomorrow, first thing, we can get this engine and transmission picked up into the car, and then we'll finish up the wiring and give it a first test fire. So let's get right into this. I'm going to get this mounted up, and we'll start gapping rings. Alright, y'all, I'm starting to figure out getting these rings gapped. This is the first time I've done this. It's starting to go a little bit faster, but it's already like 7:30, and I did 2 rings. So I got rings that are like 2 millimeters too thick, or too, I don't know. I need to take over 2 millimeters off, and that's a lot to file. So I'm gonna take this old piston off. I tried to get them to machine the block with the water pump and everything in. I don't know how it was in the way, but apparently it was. So they took it out while it was up there. So I need to look at pictures and look online and figure out how that all goes back together. But in the meantime, I'm going to start getting this crankshaft cleaned, these crank bearings cleaned, getting some assembly oil on them, and we're going to set the crank in here. We're going to put the girdle on the block so that this can support the weight as well, because I only have 2 bolts holding this engine up right now. So get the girdle on so we can bolt to the rest of that girdle, and then I'll go back to rings. It's going to take all night to get this engine together, so scrap the idea of even getting close to touching the subframe on that car. It's going to take the entire time just getting this apart. So I'm going to flip this over. I'm going to clean everything again, and then I will oil everything, and I'll show you setting this stuff up. Unfortunately, I don't have a camera stand anymore, so I have to do all this with holding my phone. But I'll make the best of what I have here. So I'll try to show you how to set up a crank. It's pretty simple. It's pretty straightforward. And we'll get this block assembly started. Alright, I'm going to show you how to do my least favorite thing. Gap rings. So in engine building, this has now become my least favorite part. This is the first time I've ever gapped rings, and I hate it. But it is a very important part of engine building. So this is my top ring. You can tell, well, because of the way that it is. And it's very clearly marked by the chrome. And the second ring will sometimes have like a groove on the edge. So if you were to read, or if you were to look at that edge right there, if it has a curve or anything like that on the bottom, then it's probably your second ring, which is your oil scraper ring. This is a compression ring. So one thing to note is that I bought rings that are way too big, like 2 millimeters. That's a lot. Like usually I should have got 86 millimeters because this is 85 point something millimeters. I should have got those 86s. I got 88s, so I got way too big. I'm gonna put this in here, and you can see these overlap a lot. Usually you wouldn't have that kind of overlap, but because I have that kind of overlap, I'm doing something that nobody should do, and I'm marking them and I'm drawing a nice, clean, fine line there, so that when I'm filing, I know when I'm getting close, because you have to check these a lot. It takes, usually for me, not having super fancy tools, like 20 to 30 minutes per ring for the top ones, and then like 10 minutes for the bottom ones, because they're a lot easier. But I'll start like that. Make sure that this is square in the bore, like height, like depth wise, it's square the whole way around. You can use like painter's tape or duct tape, or you can use a piston and push this down flush so that it goes down even. And then once you get that done, whoops. As you can tell, I'm not exactly an engine builder. I'll take this over here, and then in this vise, I can put my file, which is actually over there. I'll put my file in the vise, and then you can file these by hand back and forth. I did try the grinder on the oil ones, the weight, like the 3 bottom ones, and it works, but you have to be extremely careful because thousandths of an inch comes off in half a second. I mean, it's up to you, but that's what I do. So I might, use the electric for like a second, and then once I get to the point where I'm remotely close, I'm going to start hand filing, and it takes forever. But I will hand file this. I already recorded. I had one that was filed like perfect. I'll show you what to do after you get it filed. We'll deburr it, and then I'll show you measuring it in the cylinder. All right, so I filed the majority of it down, and we're starting to finally get close. This is how far down I measure them in the bore in my method, because I don't have anything that fits in here real well, is using this screwdriver, and I'll sit it here, and you got to go around it like 4 times, because if you don't, it's not going to be straight, and also don't scrape the sidewall with it. But it works. So once I get it sitting square in there, I absolutely can measure that. Obviously, I still have a ways to go, but it's a good start, and I'm going to take this file over, which is a little bit finer than the one that was over there to start, and always go one way. So let me grab the ring. When you're filing, say the file is sitting like this in your stand or whatever, if you're hand filing, only push down and then like take it off, then push down, take it off, push down. Always file into the center of the ring. Another thing to remember whilst filing, make sure that you're filing your edge even, so that when the ring is closed, when it is closed, it's like a smooth close. It's not a gap at the top or a gap at the bottom. You can adjust as you go, but you shouldn't really be able to see sunlight through it. That one's pretty decent. I wish it would focus. There we go. So, it's hard to get him to stay. But when it's in there, you don't want to see sunlight. So make sure you file them straight. And then when you're deburring them, just use a file. This is a little bit finer one. And you'll just want to go across the top of it, the bottom especially. And if there's some sticking out on the edge, just be very careful. Like, really tiny movements change a lot with these. So I'm going to keep filing. I've only put it in there like 20 times, so I'm getting close. And once I'm done filing that ring, I will get it thrown in there, and then I will do the rest of the rings for cylinder 4. And rings are done, and all I'm waiting on is my new main bearings. I realized that was a pretty crude, like, how to gap rings. Make sure you check your gap. You know what you need. For me, I went 18 thous, 12 thou, and then 15 on the oil rings. The oil rings are way less important, because I bought ones that were way too big. Having something to shoot for was definitely a good priority, but there it is. That took, I'm not even kidding you, multiple hours just to do 4-cylinder rings. So, on to the engine floor. Head is done, ready to go. We already have our pistons. I mounted them on the connecting rods, super easy. I have rod caps. I have rod bearings in there. I have everything else here ready to go. The supercharger is ready to go. Seems like all I have to do is get those bearings, and I'll see you guys Wednesday or Thursday when those bearings go in. All right, y'all. I got new bearings. I ended up getting these from Ecotec, like the best eBay brand. They're gonna work. Like all the Ecotec stuff is in my Camaro engine, and I've beat it up pretty good. I got this side, new bearings put on. This side, new bearings put on. They fit great. I'm gonna get some of this engine assembly lube smeared all over this. I'm gonna set the crank in. We'll get the girdle on. To put the girdle on, there's actually no gasket that goes in between the two. You have to use black RTV. So I have just enough black RTV left. I'm gonna make myself follow a bead. I get the crankshaft in. We'll get the bottom end pretty much put together. Then we're just, kind of waiting on the top end stuff, the rings. I got another set of rings. I wasn't happy with the end result of filing my first time, so I got another set of rings. I got some that are supposed to be perfectly gapped for this engine. So as long as they come in and they fit and they're the right clearance, we'll use them. Definitely gonna double check. I already got all this put, like everything's ready. I'm just waiting on piston rings. I even got the pistons together. So I'm gonna get this crankshaft put in here. I'm gonna get the girdle on the block, and we'll start buttoning up this bottom end. All right, I got the girdle put back on the block. I have to look up my pictures. I'm pretty sure there was bolts in here that also were here. I'm gonna try to find those because, I want this thing completely bolted down. I'm just about out of black RTV, so I'm gonna have to pick up some more to do the oil pan gasket, but I'll be in town tomorrow for church. It's Sunday, so I'll grab some. Everything's going pretty smooth. I didn't even spin the crank, but yeah, it spins completely fine, nice and easy. So that's a good sign. Looks like in all of my bags, I don't have anything labeled block girdle, but I'm gonna look through all these. I'm gonna look through the trunk of the car, and I'm gonna look back at my old footage and try to figure out where those were, and I'll get the rest of this snugged down. And it looks like I can maybe start putting on some of the water pump and timing stuff, and just getting ready for the engine head and pistons to go on. All right, so it's time to put in new valve seals. I'm going to show you how I did this. So this side here I've already completed. There's all the old valve seals. This is my first time doing it on anything, not a small engine. So start by taking off. I'm going to take off these caps. Make sure these are pretty easily labeled, like obviously 1, 2. It should be facing that way, but my workbench, it's going to have to be this way. So take all these off, lay them in order. You will have to take this off, and then I'll show you how to clock your cam sensor when you put this back together for this Ecotec application. Take these off, get the cam out. Once the cam's on the ground, I'll show you how to start getting into this. Quick little reminder, I've broken one of these bolts in my last Cobalt, actually. Be very careful with them. They are extremely delicate. I'm going to break them loose. That's really tight for some reason. I'm going to break these loose with the hand ratchet. Just break them loose. Throw them on the electric to get them out. All right, here we go. Cam is out. This is what you're left with. Very important to keep track of your valve train, the exact order that it came out. Those have to go back in the same places because I'm using the same cam and all that. Definitely try to use a piece of cardboard. I accidentally set that there. The carpet's fine, except you have to really clean that stuff before you put it back in. Now, this tool is a lifesaver. I bought it on Amazon for like $25 or $27. Comes in that red box. I use this for my YZ450. I can use this for this car, and I could use this for a small block Chevy. It's a great tool, and it's super useful. So all you have to do is line up this end through the underneath of the head. And you need to make sure you can get it onto the bottom side, or the front of that valve, really. So just like that. Now from the underside, we won't be able to see too well maybe, but that is going to sit on the valve, just like so. So as you tighten this, I use a screwdriver. As you tighten this, you're going to press down on this spring and this cap, and it's going to keep the valve the whole way up in the engine. So let me press down, release the spring, keep the valve up, and then I'll show you how to get these little retainers out. All right, now that we have that the whole way down, I'm going to show you how to get these retainers apart. This is a real test of patience. If you want to see if you have patience, put 16 of these back together. But they're basically just halves. So I'm going to get this tool in here. Oh, there we go. I slid the back half off. They spin around, and all you're trying to do is just get them to fold back, basically. Like that. Bam. Easy peasy. It's actually not easy. Then you grab your little pliers. All right, so now there's nothing holding this spring back except this tool. So if you were to just flip this tool out of the way, it's gonna go flying. So, you know, I'm just gonna hold this kind of in place. This thing is a pretty simple setup. I'm not really too worried. Now, it is catching a little bit because of this setup, so I'm gonna have to pull this to the side. There it goes. Make sure it's not catching on the head, just the design of this head. That is now out of the way, so I flip this over. This guy and the spring can come off the top. I'll set them over here. These are going back in after a quick cleaning. Now this is our valve. We can push our valve out and pull it off through the bottom. There's our exhaust valve. And the first thing I look for is that silver ring on the outside of the valve. That silver ring, I want to see how much carbon is built up behind the valve to let me know if this valve is actually still sealing on the head. If it's not, you would have to lap your valves using lapping compound and just spinning these on the head. But I really don't have anything to do that, so I'm going to try to avoid it unless I have a catastrophic failure. So next is actually the valve seal. So this is the whole reason we're in here. This whole bag on ZZP is like $20. It's so worth it just to do valve seals while you have your engine apart. Valve seals will prevent smoking if your engine runs at higher RPMs especially. And all they do is seal the oil from that's sitting in the head from seeping down on your valve stem and getting into your chamber and just burning oil basically and creating a blue smoke. It's super cheap and it's very easy to do. It really was intimidating. I didn't do this on my Camaro when I rebuilt that engine, and I definitely regret it. And you can tell it smokes. So that's it. Popped it right out. I actually dropped it. There it is. Old valve seal is out. So now I'm going to clean this up. I just use a vacuum and I suck that oil out, and then I spray brake clean and use a clean rag and clean this whole surface. And then I'll clean the bottom side as well where the valve sits, and then we'll put the new one in and get this put back together. All right, new valve seal. It's cleaned up. Just get it down on there and it'll just kind of like snap in. Just press it down firmly. It is in. Next, I cleaned off our valve already, so I can put it through on the bottom side. So there it is. It's about to come up. I like to go quick, like that, so that it doesn't accidentally push that valve seal back up. Should hold it right in place there. I'm going to clean the spring cap. All right, I just set the spring cap right on there. Get our tool ready to go back on. There we go. I got the tool lined up. I'm going to start tightening it down. Just like this, you're going to start pressing or compressing that spring down. I don't know, I'm not an engine builder. I try not to go the entire way to the bottom when I'm doing this, like 100% compress the spring. But I really don't know if it makes a difference, if I'm being honest. But that's good there. And these little retainers are like funnel shaped. So put them back in the way they came out. You can usually tell by the coloration. You know, for me, this bottom side will be cleaner than the top side. There you can see kind of the angle of the funnel shape. Anyway, get this. You're gonna want to try your best to get it set in there. This is the test of patience. Everything up to this point was 50%. You're halfway done. The whole 50% of the second half of this is getting these retainers in. Now, once you play around with them a little bit, they get to be a little easier. But man, when you first start, good luck. So I like to just pick the side that has a big gap, kind of try to position it. You can try to, shake this a little bit. I might need 2 hands. This is really hard. I'm sorry I'm holding the camera. But I'm going to try to shift this around. There we go. I got it in. See how it sits nice and tight up against there? So I got to put the second retainer in. Both of them have to be smooth in there, and then we can take this off. All right, so I got them both in there. I'm going to start coming up with this. And just like that, valve seal is replaced. So that's one. There's obviously 16 on this engine. There's 4 valves per cylinder. I did 8 of them. I just got to finish these ones out. I'm going to finish doing all these, listening to music so I don't lose my mind. And then we will get ready for reassembly, where we're going to use some reassembly lube from Permatex. All right, all 16 valve seals are replaced. I cleaned up all of our mating surfaces. I also cleaned up and put on some of this ultra slick engine assembly lube from Permatex. It's the same stuff I used on my Camaro years ago, and it's just been sitting on the shelf. You can't use too much of it. That's very important to note. You can't put too much on here. I'm cheap, so I put on just enough to get this thing started. It's also a used engine, so having a ton of this stuff isn't as important. But next, we'll grab our camshaft. I'll show you how to clock that. These are all cleaned up already, so everything's ready to go back in. Actually, before the camshaft, we've got to put in our lifters, or rocker arms, I guess. We'll put in our rocker arms, and then we can throw in the cam. There we go. Once again, can't use too much of this stuff. I'm going to try to keep it on the top side where our cam is going to go, so I'm going to grab the cam next. I'm going to grab it in the center. I'm going to very carefully line our cam up. Make sure not to bump any of these lifters out of place. Okay, so it's sitting down exactly where it needs to be. It can't really go forward or backwards. This kind of locks it in that way, so to make sure that's in. That's good to go. Next, I'm going to put more engine assembly lube on the top of these. And then I'm going to get my caps put on, and then I'll show you how I torque these, what torque spec I use, and then we'll get ready to clock our sensor. All right, all of our caps are set on here. They're just started. This is where it's a huge piece of advice to use hand tools only from this point. So I'm going to use a ratchet with a 10 millimeter. These are so fragile. Like I said, I snapped one off on the first Cobalt I had. I had to weld to it. I had to get it back out. I put in a grade 8 bolt. It fits, it ships, but try to avoid that, obviously. That looks a little ridiculous. So these are also included in caps. So I'm going to tighten all these. I'm going to start in the middle. So I'll start with this one, then this one, then this one, then this one, that one, and I do this one last. So I'm going to tighten these until they're just touching, like this is just touching, and then I'll go back and double check, and then I'll put it on the torque wrench, and I'll torque these to 89 inch-pounds, and I'll double check them with the torque wrench after I make my first pass. That will get our cam tightened, and then I will try to show you how to get this clocked. I was really confident, and then now I'm not so confident because obviously we're missing the rest of the engine. So we're going to try to get that set right so that when we fire this bad boy up, we don't have to take that back off. All right, so this is fully bolted down and torqued. I've spun both of these cams a couple times to make sure that everything's happy. All these rockers are staying in place. Everything's good to go. Now, I'm purely basing this off my memory of the head gasket on my first Cobalt. But these two, this is the cylinder 1 intake and exhaust cams. This is the exhaust, this is the intake. They need to be facing each other, kind of like at the way they're at now. So if you look at the way those cams are facing, that's about how it should be. Now this one might have to come back just a little bit, but I believe that's top dead center. Now obviously we don't have a bottom end of an engine. We'll have to keep in mind that our top should be already in time, so when we get that put on, we should be putting it on here at what is top dead center of our first piston. All right, this is me in the future. I was way wrong. You'll see later in the video we had to take this cam sensor back out after the car was done. But you'll see that later. I'm just saving you some time. All right, I have every single piece to put this engine together. So I'm going to start by showing you my pistons here. So this is cylinder number 1. I still have the direction and cylinder. I have all the rings on it. I've cleaned this like 4 times. I've cleaned the cylinders 3 times, and I've cleaned the crankshaft multiple times. I put on our rod bearings on this half, and I have the end caps over there, which are also labeled. So, top ring, sometimes they'll have a mark, sometimes not. This one, since it has this laser edge, read your instructions, means that this ring can go either way. My second ring, which is right here, does have an up mark on it, so I made sure to follow that. And then my oil rings were also dual direction, so I was able to put those in as well. Gaps, I do them 90 degrees off. I start at 12 o'clock, 3 o'clock, and this one, which actually slid over a little bit, will be at 6. And then the wavy ring, I'll do last actually. I'll do the other metal ring here at 9. And the wavy ring I'll put at a 45, any of the 45s. But I also do strongly believe that ring position does not matter that much. I do this anyway, but I do not think that if your rings are not in this exact order that you will have any issues. Alright, so now that I have this up here, I'll double check that my cylinder is perfectly clean. I'm going to grab some fresh oil, which is in that bucket, and I'm going to oil this cylinder down very well. I had oil on my piston. I rubbed around the rings, and then I will show you how to put this in here. You will need this tool to put pistons back in the engine, and then we'll start getting this thing pushed down the cylinder. I also like to make sure my crank is at bottom dead center for that piston, so these edges and corners don't accidentally hit the crankshaft. So I always do whatever cylinder is at the bottom, and then just spin the crankshaft, which you should be able to spin by hand pretty easily, just like so. So I'm going to get this all oiled up, and then we'll hammer this in. Alright, that cylinder is all oiled up. The reason we do that is so that we don't scratch it as we put this piston down. But I'll pick this up. We can see which way is the front. Also, judging based off our number and stamps that are in here. So I'm going to get this guy, being very careful not to touch the cylinder wall with our connecting rod. Put that there. So I can see by the 0.75 that we are about perfectly straight. This 2 is a little crooked. These are all marked with a 2, by the way. So this is not cylinder 2, just letting you know. We have the ears of the piston that were sticking out at the bottom, as you can see there. So that'll hold the piston, pretty much well lined up. I even cleaned the handle to this. You just want no dirt, basically, when you're building an engine. And then all you do is you'll give it a few taps. Once I get close to getting into the cylinder, I like to give her one good one, just like that. Bam, piston is now in the cylinder. I can take my air because this hammer let off a little bit of rubber pieces, and I'll just immediately get those out of the way while we're near the top. Now, I'm going to flip this engine over. Actually, I'm not going to flip it over yet. I'm going to use my hand. I need 2 hands for this, so I have to set my phone down. I'm going to use my hand to hold and guide the connecting rod straight, even onto that crankshaft. And I'm going to tap it with that hammer handle the whole way down until it's touching the crankshaft. All right, our piston's at the bottom of the bore. As you can see, our cylinder is nice and clean. It scraped all that oil down, which is what it's supposed to do with that second ring. Spin this guy over. And here we meet again at our crankshaft journal. Now I put engine oil on this. I actually meant to put some engine assembly lube on this rod bearing. So I'm going to back this back out, put some assembly lube on it, push it back up in, and put some assembly lube on this side as well, so that both sides are coated with engine assembly lube. And I'm going to repeat that for the next 4, and just put the rod caps on, and I'm going to torque those down right away so that the 4 pistons are in. And I also didn't tell you guys, I did get all the bolts in the bottom, and they're all torqued, which is 15 degrees plus 70 degrees, in case you're wondering. Quick little tip here. this little notch points to the back of the engine. And also with your bearings, if you misplaced or accidentally like brake cleaned off your arrows and stuff, these notches on this side will always go on the same notches on that side. So as long as you have your piston put in the right way, you can get your cap lined up perfectly just by lining up the notches here with the notches on there. Just like that, we have all 4 pistons on, tightened and torqued down to 18 foot-pounds. I'm going to flip this over. Well, I'm going to clean these few spots. I'm going to flip this over, and I'm probably going to start working on the water pump timing components. Get all this front end stuff done. I want to get this whole area done before I get the oil pan on. I'm going to wait a little bit before I get that oil pan on. I also need to clean up the oil pan. This is actually one that came with the car. It was an extra one. And the one that was in the car did not have a dipstick, and they literally JB welded a bolt in there, so that kind of sucks. So I'm going to have to take this tray out with these Torx. I'm going to have to kind of sand this up and make sure there's no rust on it. Maybe it's just oil, I don't know. I'll clean it all out. I don't want any dirt or dust, and then I got to clean this edge here. I don't want paint on the edge. I want it to seal, so I'm going to sand this edge down so that we have a nice smooth edge. And then this just has black RTV as a gasket. I picked up some more. So the oil pan is ready to go on, but I'm going to wait a minute. And then don't be afraid to keep spinning your engine over as you go. Just keep checking, really, if you have any spots that are stuck or anything tight, and then go back through and diagnose and check it. I've been spinning it. It feels good. Feels like with 4 pistons, it's a little harder to turn by hand, but it's still able to be done. So I'm going to get this all cleaned up, and I'm going to start getting ready to address the timing stuff up front. All right, I got all of this done. I was able to get the original tensioner back on. That was really hard. Don't do that. Just buy a new one, please. 89 inch-pounds for the water pump pulley bolts. I'm glad I noticed those were loose. I didn't loosen those, so the engine shop did when I left the water pump on the block. These guys are all 11 foot-pounds or 132 inch-pounds. And that's it. So I'm going to start buttoning up the oil pan, actually. I'm going to just get that out of the way so we can close up the old bottom end. And then it's almost time to throw the head on. All right, the really scary parts are done. The bottom end is sealed up. I just put on some fresh RTV. I actually need to scrape off this edge. I don't want any on this front edge right here. I'm going to have to clean that off so that when we put our front gasket on, we aren't interrupted by it. But these are all torqued to 18 foot-pounds. I start here, and you can make a perfect crisscross, and it works out great. That's it for the bottom end. So I'm going to spin this out. I'm going to let it sit for a few more minutes. I'll let it harden a little bit more. And then I'm going to spin it over and clean off the top, put the head gasket on, put the head on, and then starts the timing chain journey. And I want to know at this point if you guys would like to see a little more in depth or a little less in depth. Of course, missing my camera stand, I have to hold the camera unless I get someone else to hold the camera for me. But all my friends are not available. So I'm going to say that this is the best I can do right now. But if you want to see more in depth, please let me know, because I'll show you a little bit more in detail. I feel like I'm skipping over a lot, but I am in a little bit of a hurry. You might be able to tell by the sky behind me that the sun is getting ready to go down. So it's 8:30 at night. I definitely want to have the engine 100% done. I would like the transmission on it. I don't know how much I'm going to do tonight, but I at least want the engine fully together, transmission on. So I'm going to keep cranking away at getting this head on. It's a basic install. I'm going to show you even less. I'm just cleaning off the surface, putting the head gasket on, bolting the head. Actually, I got to put head studs on first. This block has studs. Got to put head studs on, head gasket, and then get it torqued down. All right, one thing to note here, very important. So remember how I didn't know if that exhaust or that cam sensor was right? Well, it was wrong, so I'm going to have to readjust it. Now, these cam sprockets, they only go one way. Do you see how they're kind of curved? So these can't not go on wrong. And if you try to put them on wrong, which I did on my last Cobalt, I completely stripped these off the back. And I don't know how I didn't ruin the engine, but I very well should have. So, like I said, it only fits on one way. The exhaust should be about 10 o'clock. Now, obviously, with the pressure on the springs and no chain, that's as close as we can get with that. And then this should be at about 2 o'clock. which is right there. So these are pretty much at top dead center. They'll move a little bit once we get a chain on that can hold tension. But our engine, our lower end is at top dead center. Our top end's at top dead center. I'm going to take this cam sensor back out and reclock this so that we don't have a cam sensor code. And then I will put on these bolts. I also didn't want to be spinning these when I knew these two cylinders were at the top of their stroke, because I didn't want to be pounding the valves. So I left this completely unbolted just so I could turn these and not worry about putting too much pressure if it did touch a piston, which I don't think it did. So I'm going to get this reset to top dead center, and then I'm going to torque down all these head bolts, and then I'll start doing my timing stuff up front here so I can get the whole front of this engine closed up. All right. These are torqued to 22 foot-pounds plus 155 degrees. These are torqued to 63 foot-pounds. Like I said, we're close to top dead center. I'm actually going to hook up our entire timing chain setup, and then I'm going to adjust the sensor. By the way, I don't remember if I put this in the video or not. When timing this does have timing marks on it, these gold links. One gold link will be on this arrow, one will be on this arrow, and one will be on this dot. So I think they all point like, I think this one points like down and that one points like down. You spin it over once and it'll look completely wrong, but put it on that way and then your whole bottom end will be in time. So I'm going to get to getting this top end timed and then fix that sensor, and I'm going to bolt on the whole front pulley cover. I don't know if I'll film any rest until this is completely covered up. I don't know if I'm going to put the valve cover gasket on or not because it's painted and it looks nice, and I'm afraid the chain of putting it in the car is going to just destroy it, but we'll see. Maybe I will. I would like to have some sort of cover on it so it's not getting a bunch of dirt. And then we're getting close to, or we're going to bolt on front accessories, and then it's time to get this thing hooked up to the transmission. So I'll probably see you when everything is put back together on this engine and the engine crane is unfolded. All right, y'all, the block is almost completely done. It's 10:20 at night, so it took a little while. Then I realized one thing. I was looking back over my torque sheets over here, where I have each and every torque spec, and I realized when I put the bottom end together, I did not finish torquing the connecting rods. They are 18 foot-pounds, I think, or 11, or whatever it is, whatever I said before, plus 100 degrees. And I only did the initial torque. I never turned them 100 degrees. So flipping this back over, taking the old or the new black RTV off, re-torquing those, and then doing it all over again. But the good news is that pretty much the rest of the engine is completely done. So I'm really happy to see that we've made it this far. So I'll get that finished up, and then all I'm going to do is bolt on those front accessories, and I'm done for the night. So the worst part has honestly been the bugs. They've been terrible, but I'm going to flip this over, finish the bottom end with those rod bolts, and then get those front accessories mounted. All right, I got these retorqued at 18 foot-pounds and 100 degrees. They're all good. And I put on some fresh RTV, and I cleaned up both sides. So I'm just letting this set for a few minutes, put the oil pan on. I put the crank pulley on so I could spin the engine to tighten all these, and I did a couple rotations. It feels really good. So I'm going to get that pan on, flip this back over, and just get these front accessories mounted up, and grab the engine crane in the garage, and that's it for tonight. All right, so here we go. Engine and transmission are together. I have all of my front accessories on. Everything's torqued, flywheel. I used Loctite and all that, and pressure plate, all that fun stuff. It's all in there. The bell housing is on. It is tight and ready to go. I did finally get that axle off. I figured it would be so in the way, so I got it out of there. It's currently sitting on the bottom of the engine crane because when we roll it over there, I'm going to have to detach this chain when I get it underneath the car. It's like, alright, so it's like 10:20 p.m. and I really don't want to be making my neighbors upset rolling an engine around in the driveway, but I'm never out here making tons of noise this late I'm really out here this late to begin with. It's just my work schedule this week has been work later, so I'm gonna take one for the team. I'm just gonna send it tonight, and then I'll give my neighbor some cookies tomorrow. So I'm gonna put this all out in the driveway. I'm gonna just get this engine lifted up in, bolted in, and then once I get like at least the transmission and engine, like the main mounts, so that one, and then the one that's over here on the front of the engine. Once I get those two on, that's probably going to be about it. I don't know. I would like to get the subframe on, but it's really dependent on time. All right, y'all. I got the engine in. I covered it with plastic. It's starting to rain on and off again at night. It took this evening to get it all here. It's 100% in, like the engine crane is off. The subframe is back underneath the car. It's not completely in, but it's bolted up in. And I was starting to get some of the odds and ends wrapped up. I'm making some good progress. Looking over here at our pile. I'm probably going to do the dipstick and starter next because they're kind of hard to get to, covered by a lot of wires and whatnot. And then I'll just start going through these bags of hardware. And my least favorite part and most confusing is going to be wiring this car. This car is a pretty hateful wiring harness, so it's going to be a long one to figure out. But, you know, it'll be doable. So I'm going to get everything wrapped up, cleaned up for tonight, and make sure everything is covered in plastic. The whole engine is covered in plastic so that it doesn't get any rain in it. And all the wiring's covered, and then I'm heading for the night. So I'll see y'all tomorrow where I don't have work, so I can actually work on this in the morning. And hopefully we get this car fired up and running. All right, so check it out. I've spent about 7 hours, 6 hours, I don't know, today so far, getting this thing put back together. We still got plenty of daylight left. And the engine's in, everything's on. There's oil in it, there's a little bit of coolant in it. I'm gonna burp the system still. I put some coolant down in the supercharger system. I'm kind of cleaning up a few tools, just pushing them onto the floor in the garage. I actually tried to crank it. It fired. I'll show the clip. I did record it for the first time. Instantly would shut off. I did that about 3 or 4 times. I'm gonna check the mass airflow sensor down here. It had a hard time kind of clicking in. First start action. Forgot the throttle position sensor. First start with the throttle position sensor hooked up. Should fire it off. So I'm going to try to get that figured out before I get this last wheel put on. The only other piece that needs to go on is the resonator. I dissected the exhaust when I put it back together. That made it really easy. So we have the header and our collector down there, or downpipe. So I'm going to throw this resonator on real quick, and then we'll be ready to fire this again. I'm going to mix a little more coolant so that we can fill this reservoir up again. It drained a little bit, and then we can fire this sucker up yet again. All right, here we go. Refilled this. I put some more in there. It keeps going down. I'll start filling that as it's running. This is really slow process when it's not running. I'm looking over. I don't think I missed anything. I think that's supposed to not be completely open, but should run. There we go. Fixed. I think that's where that goes. I'm actually not that sure. Fixed. We'll see if it runs any better. I got all the sensors, I believe, hooked in. I don't think I left any unplugged. I was keeping track of all of them as I was going. Didn't notice anything that was out of the ordinary. Mass airflow sensor is plugged back in, kind of. It's weird. I'm having some issues with that, and that should be a ZZP one, I think. And then I'm going to change. I got to add transmission fluid. I bought some to flush and put new in, but we got to be able to start it. I'm going to put the air filter on. I'm going to hop in and I'll show you cranking the key. All right, air filter's on. Full exhaust this time. It didn't sound like it was running on all four on that clip. And I'm wondering if one of those coils, that one that was missing, was actually bad. We're gonna give it another try though and see if it is any happier this time. There we go. Definitely missing. So I'm gonna unplug a coil and see if it goes down. It did not like that at all. Trying to see which cylinder is missing here. It's not that one. It's a very healthy cylinder. Let's try this one. Yep. That's our dead cylinder right there. I'm gonna swap that coil out and then fire it back up. All right, so I found my supercharger oil. It's like empty, it all leaked out. That's nice. I'm gonna put some in here. It sounds like it's low. Of course, no one has it in stock, so I had to order it online. That'll be here in 2 days. Now, I decided to fill the transmission so I could just set this car on the ground. And there's our fill plug. That's a circle. I've been pretty willing to put up with all the nonsense I found on this car from a mechanic. He works at a Chevy dealer, just letting you know. But this one got me. I'm pretty furious about this one, I'm not gonna lie. Now, I'd be a coward if I gave up. So I have two T45s. I'm gonna stick this in there. I'm gonna grab my welder, and we're gonna make them one. And then from this day forward, it's gonna be a 3/8 ratchet to get that top plug out. I would have rather the bottom one been stripped because it's at least empty already. But no, it's the fill plug. So that would have been nice to know when the transmission was out on the floor. I really wish I would have checked that. I could have, you know, done this while it was laying on the garage floor. But nevertheless, I'm gonna take this, I'm gonna disconnect the battery, take this, I'm gonna weld this on. I'm gonna get that top plug out, presuming it comes out. Take the bottom plug out, make sure there's nothing left in there. And I'm gonna start filling this transmission back up. Takes 1.7 quarts of 75 W90. You don't need the limited slip stuff. You could use GW4, but I got GW5 just because it's all I had. It's okay. I would use just GW4 stuff. So I'm gonna get this all put back together, figured out, and then get the wheel back on so I can set the car on the ground. And we'll fire it back up again, try to continue diagnosing this misfire. I think it was just that coil. In fact, I'm pretty certain. But I want to get this transmission thing fixed before I fire it up again. You remember how I said I was upset now? Well, it's worse. It's way worse. I just snapped off my Torx. So whoever stripped that to the high heavens and torqued it to 7,000 foot-pounds, you better hope I don't find you. Alright, so I gotta laugh. I mean, what can I do? I'm gonna have to try to weld a socket on that now. That's the last thing I got, man. if socket don't get that sucker off, we're about to have an issue. I have to flip the car over and fill from the bottom, right? So if the socket doesn't get that off, I'm like legit gonna have an issue. So I'm gonna try that, and I'll update you once I get that on. That's the best I can do, y'all. I'm gonna give her a try, see if it comes out. Y'all, God is good. Look at this. Look at that. I cannot believe that even came close to working. And I probably destroyed this plug. Look at how bad those welds were for getting that off. That was really hard to weld. It's actually burning my hand right now. I'm gonna finish welding that gap, and that's how I'm putting this sucker back in. I'll tell you that for a fact. So the bottom one does not look to be stripped. So I'm gonna get the bottom one out, drain whatever's left in here. I'm gonna lower the car so it's level so I can drain it out and then start filling her up. Check that out. I'm gonna shut this off soon. That supercharger is squealing. That was our miss, 100%. That's running real smooth. Super glad to see that. Hop on in. Not a single check engine light. So I'm gonna call and see if I can get supercharger oil from my friend. He might have some. Try to top the supercharger off. I'm gonna throw the wheel on, and then if we can get that supercharger filled, we can at least go for a test drive. But that belt is still loose, and it's charging as well. We're at 14.3, so looks like everything worked. So I'm gonna go just figure the supercharger out, and then we'll go for a test drive, hopefully. Alright, as you can see, I took this car for the first test drive, and it was running great when I wasn't videoing, and then it started to run pretty bad actually. And so it was actually running like zero boost. I'll show you the clips here. There was like no boost again. So when it first started running, it did have boost, but it was low. It was like 10-12 pounds, and with a 2.8 pulley we should be over 15, I believe, because with my stock one I was running close to 15. So I did a little research, and then this is our most likely candidate here, this spring guy. I don't know if I can even check it, so it might just have to be replaced. So all I did was I noticed that there was no hose clamps on this thing, and it was just vacuum lines that were just pushed on. This one had zip tie on it, this one had nothing. This one had absolutely nothing, so I put hose clamps on everything. And we'll try that here in a little bit. But when I was scanning to see if anything had come up to point me towards this boost issue. And I still only have that camshaft position sensor code, which sucks because I thought I had it nailed. But that's a good sign, I guess, that that's my only issue. So now I'm gonna put the hood back on after I adjust and readjust this camshaft position sensor. Now, last time I did that, I actually took the valve covers off when checking to see if I was at top dead center of the compression stroke. And I mean, everything else, it's weird because, I mean, obviously I set timing right because it runs perfectly fine. So it must have just been me putting that sensor in, unless the sensor's bad. So let me just double check. It creates a hard starting issue, and it also runs not as good as it should. So I'm gonna check that sensor out and try to get it clocked right. I'm just gonna pull the #1 spark plug and put a bore scope down there and try to see if the valves are closed when it comes up top. All right, so I pulled the cam sensor out. Everything is still hot. It's been like 30-40 minutes. I cleaned up most of the garage. I was completely wrong. So when the engine's at top dead center, you want to align this guy with that mark. So I had it in like this at like the 10 o'clock position, so I was way wrong. So I'm gonna clock it to right there. I have it at top dead center. I'm just guessing it's the compression stroke on cylinder number 4. I'm honestly just guessing, but when I took this out, it was in the same position that I put it in, so I'm thinking I'm right. I'm just really lazy and I don't want to take that valve cover off. So I'm gonna try this and see what happens. All right, y'all, I got everything put back together. And I also remembered that I had a spare supercharger, so I'd change this guy out to see if that fixes our boost issue. So I'm gonna hop inside here. There we go. So we have one code. It is that camshaft sensor, P0017. We're gonna erase that and reset this. Let's fire it up and see how it runs. I'll let it run for a while, and then I'm gonna take it for a test drive and see if that fixes it. Sure enough, I bet that's our issue. Now we've got 10 pounds. I'm sure it's still not running quite right, but that's definitely our issue. This is just about going to conclude the video. I'm far from done with this car, and we're still having these misfire codes come up, as you can see right there. And they'll go away, but I have lots of playing around, lots of tuning, and letting it break in as well. It's a fresh engine, so letting those rings seat, really start getting this thing running good. I'm gonna take it for a little drive. I'll record as much as I can. It's hard to drive stick with one hand, but I'm not gonna beat on it. It's fresh engine, so I'm just gonna try to make some noise and have some fun for y'all, and then we're gonna end the video. Thanks for watching. If you did watch this far, I really appreciate it. I know the quality's not amazing. I hope that the quality of the video is better this time. Next time I'm gonna try to get someone to film, so thank you for stopping. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch y'all in the next video. Let's make some noise.